Help me hit 7,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. Thank you. I never imagined a night out could feel like the ground had disappeared beneath me. But that Tuesday, it did. My name is Oliver, and I had just turned 29. I thought I was confident, secure in my relationship with Clara, who had been my girlfriend for 3 years. I knew she had a lively personality. Fun, charming, magnetic in the way people gravitate toward her without effort. That was one of the things I loved about her. And yet, for the first time, I felt like a ghost standing in her own home, invisible and unimportant. It started innocuously enough at her friend Marigold's birthday party. I had been invited, of course, and I expected laughter, stories, dancing, just a night among friends. Clara had asked me to meet her there, and I arrived a little early, thinking maybe I'd help set up, grab her a drink, maybe even get a chance to show her how much I cared. She was already there, chatting with her friends, radiant as always. I waved, and she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. A small detail, but I noticed. And then I saw Elliot, Marigold's cousin, standing behind her, adjusting the back of her dress. I froze. Oliver, just let him help, Clara said, her voice clipped, almost teasing. I just asked him to zip my dress. If you're jealous, just shut up and go home. And just like that, she turned her back to me, let Elliot do it, and laughed with him as if I didn't exist. My stomach sank. I wanted to speak, to remind her of me, of everything we'd shared, but I stayed silent. My words felt small, meaningless against the roar of laughter and music around us. I left the party quietly, no dramatic exit, no confrontation. I didn't even glance back. I booked the first flight home that night, the hum of the airplane engines matching the ache in my chest. I didn't know how I could explain it to anyone else. It wasn't that Clara had flirted intentionally, or that Elliot had crossed a line. It was how easily she dismissed me, how naturally she laughed as if I had vanished. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages, calls, notifications flooding in, but none from her. My friends texted, worried. You okay, Ollie? What happened last night? Are you coming to brunch, or are you staying in bed? Even Marigold sent me a message, the faint guilt in her words obvious. Sorry if last night was weird. I ignored everything for a while, letting the messages pile up. I needed space, a moment to collect myself. The buzzing of my phone, normally a comforting tether to the world, felt like nails scratching on glass. Every vibration reminded me of my invisibility, how completely Clara had erased me in front of Elliot and the crowd. It wasn't just about jealousy. I've always trusted her, never questioned her loyalty. But that night, it wasn't loyalty I noticed. It was dismissal, casual, effortless, and it cut deeper than I could have imagined. I replayed her words over and over in my mind. If you're jealous, just shut up and go home. The way she had said it, light, playful, but sharp enough to wound, made it stick. By midday, I realized I needed to step away. Not from her, necessarily, but from the place where I could feel so small. I booked a cab to the airport, left my apartment, and walked through the city streets, watching people move around me, laughing, talking, living in their own worlds. None of them knew the quiet collapse I felt inside. The flight felt surreal. I stared out the window at the clouds, feeling the same disconnection I'd felt at the party. It wasn't just Clara, not entirely. It was how she made me question my own presence, my worth, my place in her life. I had always thought we were partners, equals, companions in every sense. And now it felt like she had quietly rewritten the rules while I slept. By the time I landed, the buzzing began again. This time, frantic, insistent. Multiple missed calls, texts piling on top of each other, all from Clara. Ollie, please answer me. I didn't mean it like that. You can't leave me like this. But the messages only reminded me of how her actions had already spoken. Words meant nothing now. The laughter, the casual dismissal, the choice to sidestep me in favor of Elliot. It all screamed louder than her explanations ever could. I didn't respond. I didn't know what to say. I just let the phone buzz, the notifications pile, the messages flood. While I sat on a bench at the airport, letting the reality of the night sink in, I had left without a word, and part of me wondered if that was the first act of clarity I had experienced in months. The silence was not emptiness. It was space, a pause, a moment where I could decide who I wanted to be without her reaction dictating it. I stayed on that bench for what felt like hours, just watching people move past me, carrying on with their ordinary lives. The contrast between their lightness and my heaviness was almost unbearable. Somewhere in that quiet, I realized something. I hadn't lost Clara in that moment. She had already lost me. My presence, my care, my love, things I had assumed were constants, had been dismissed so casually, I hadn't even noticed the erosion until it was undeniable. By mid-afternoon, I decided to check into a small hotel downtown. The lobby smelled faintly of coffee and polish, a neutral scent that reminded me of nothing. I ordered a room, dragged my bag behind me, and collapsed onto the bed. For the first time that morning, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of my hurt. Tears came, not loud, not dramatic, but quiet, shaking, the kind that make your chest feel hollow and your throat raw. It was during that silence that my phone buzzed again. Another message from Clara. "Oliver, please. I just wanted to laugh. I didn't mean to make you feel invisible." I read it and set the phone down. I didn't respond. I didn't want to, because I knew it wasn't just about the dress, the party, or Elliot. It was about respect, about being seen, about the acknowledgement that your presence matters. And in that room, alone, I understood something fundamental. No explanation, no apology, no casual excuse could rewrite the reality that had been created. I spent the night reflecting, thinking back over the months I had spent adjusting, compromising, explaining away small dismissals, subtle neglect, tiny cracks that had slowly widened into a canyon I could no longer ignore. I thought of the little moments I had treasured, her smile when I made breakfast, her laugh when I told a joke, the way her hand felt in mine during late-night walks, and how those moments had become rarities, glimpses of a past that was fading too quickly. The next morning, I woke early, feeling an odd clarity. The buzzing of my phone continued, but it no longer felt urgent. Each vibration was a reminder, not of guilt or obligation, but of choice. I chose to not engage, to not let myself be minimized again. I booked a cab to a nearby park, walked to a bench under a large oak, and simply sat. The wind stirred the leaves, and the sun warmed my shoulders in a quiet, indifferent comfort. It was a stark contrast to the chaos of the party, the laughter that had cut through me like a knife. Hours passed. I thought about what leaving without a word had done, not just for Clara, but for me. It was my first act of agency in months, a silent declaration that my presence, my feelings, my value, could not be negotiated or dismissed. I realized that leaving didn't mean I was ending us in anger. It meant I was ending my own participation in a cycle where I was unseen. That was the real heartbreak. Not being rejected, but realizing the rejection had already happened long before it became visible. By evening, the messages slowed. Calls stopped. The insistent buzzing turned into nothing. And in that quiet, I felt a strange, bitter relief. Not anger, not triumph, just relief. Relief that I had acted for myself, that I had reclaimed the dignity that had been eroded. I didn't need to explain, justify, or argue. I simply existed outside of the situation, alive in a way that was no longer tethered to someone else's whims. A week later, I returned home. Clara had called once, left a voicemail, a mixture of frustration and guilt in her tone, but I didn't call back. I had learned that silence could speak louder than words, that leaving sometimes says more than staying ever could. I began rebuilding my routine, my world, small steps at a time. Coffee in the mornings, running through empty streets at dawn, laughing with friends who had always seen me. Each day was a reminder that my life didn't revolve around her acknowledgement. It revolved around my own choices, my own clarity, my own self-respect. In the months that followed, I met Lila, a colleague who shared my sense of humor and subtle love for the quiet moments of life. We didn't rush, didn't force connection, but I noticed the way she listened, the way her eyes lingered when she laughed at my jokes, The way she made me feel present without effort. And it struck me. Presence, acknowledgement, care. These weren't things I had lost. They were things I had only misplaced by staying in a situation that didn't honor me. Sometimes I think about Clara, about that night, about Elliot zipping her dress. And I don't feel anger anymore. I feel clarity, a bittersweet understanding that some people aren't meant to recognize your value, no matter how evident it is. And that's okay, because the world is wide, and there are people who will see you, hear you, and laugh with you without making you feel invisible. Leaving that night, silent and alone, wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a scene from a movie. It was life, unembellished, painful, and honest. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again.